I tried to not vote for coach of the split.
And
and got told I had to fill it out or my votes didn't.
Well, also I couldn't click forward because I tried to do that on some and leave it blank, and I tried to click forward and the survey wouldn't go forward. But the third place votes, there's even less.
I'm willing to blame Mark for this.
Our spreadsheet could be wrong, is what I'm taking away from this. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm just doing some basic math here, and it's not adding up, fellas. Hello and welcome back to The Dive, driven by Kia, Season 8, Episode 21. Welcome. Nice to see you fellas here. Gentlemen. I was going to do a left-handed shake to you.
Who does a left-handed shake?
It's creepy, isn't it?
It's pretty creepy, yeah.
Yep.
People, I always was told this story that the reason you don't do it is because, people like in the Dark Ages, if someone tried to shake your left hand, then you would think they were going to stab you with the right hand.
Because it's not their dominant hand.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for not stabbing me.
Give me your sword arm so I know you're not going to stab me.
But isn't it weird that just holding it out, you have a natural just cringe to it, right? You're like, what the hell?
Well, it's just because nobody does it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's because I think I'm going to get stabbed.
I think it's because it got into our...
Just admit you were thinking a little bit that Kobe might stab you.
I mean, a little, yeah.
Just like a light stabbing.
I was checking his pockets for a shake or something.
On that note, congratulations to APA on Most Improved Player of the Year. Also, congratulations to APA on not getting stabbed. To my knowledge.
To my knowledge as well. APA... obviously, I don't think this is a big surprise to me. I think it was a Kim or Jan for sure. But I think, there's more talk about, APA didn't even deserve to be in the LCS. And there was so much negativity around him when he first came in that I think.
The flaming was so public,
I know.
And he had the whole thing with Summit and multiple teammates turbo flaming him. So I'm like, that was such a guaranteed vote. It was a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, I mean, he's gotten really good. Jan is also really good. So I think it had to be between one of them. When I was talking to people about third vote, that was where it started to differ more because some people were struggling to think of one. I put Vulcan because I thought Vulcan had a pretty down year with FlyQuest and stuff, but I guess it depends on kind of your definition because some people are like, you have to improve from your peak, and some people are like, no, it's what you were last year and so on, but not a big surprise, but definitely deserving of it.
Yeah, I think it's actually such a sick story for North American fans for APA because, like you said, he was publicly flamed by both of his teammates. You have Summit and Piosik, Summit's viewed as one of the best top laners. Piosik's won Worlds, and they were just completely shitting on him. And now Liquid stuck with him. They were we got your back, and now they're popping off. So it's actually so good for NA.
Summit's team qualified for Worlds from LLA, which it would be so cool if they played them, but I really doubt they're going to get through play-ins to actually have a chance at playing TL. But if they did, that would be, I think, a banger grudge match.
Dude, maybe that's where the all chat stemmed from. It's just all the things he wished he could say to Summit.
He's just picturing Summit.
Dude, I want to see the hovers and champ select, bro. He's gonna hover zigs and zigs.
AP can just hover Nar Jace over and over then.
Yeah. True.
Yeah. No, that would actually be so funny if they ended up meeting at Worlds. I do think it's really unlikely, but it would be pretty exciting.
Yeah. Speaking of Worlds as well, people on Reddit at least were demanding more meta changes before Worlds. And honestly, I don't blame them as far as the run up to Worlds as far as we've had for meta. But the specific one that the crosshair is on right now is Corki. Corki has been specifically destroying LPL and has been meta ever since the marksman took over. It was the Corki changes to being AD Corki, the Corki Tristana for so long, and then even after the nerfs to both of those champions, and then other ADs even rising up in mid, Corki has remained prominent.
Yeah. I mean, on 14-15, it's the second most picked champion in the game, and as far as pro play, and then 14-16 even, let's see. 14-16, it's the third most, one game behind Lilia. So it's it really didn't get pushed down that much, even with the most recent sweep of nerfs. But I mean, Corki is actually just so boring to watch. Like Azir, people complain about Azir, but at least Azir and Ori and champions like that have cool highlight moments where, it's like their ultimates are impactful, and I think they can kind of make for more exciting team fights. Ever since they took Corki's package away, I feel like he kind of lost that too. He's just like this insanely oppressive poke champ that has like incredible range late. Like, yeah, you can have that like monster team fight. Like Knight had some incredible team fights on Corki in one of their series recently, but overall, I think it's like a pretty boring champion to watch, even in late game most of the time. And early game, it is so boring to watch.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you'll get like these really scrappy all-ins when it was Corki Trist, but I mean, that's kind of the exception, not normal. I totally agree. It is interesting how when Corki got his second rework, they were saying, okay, we want to make him a bot laner again. We don't want him to be a mid laner. And it was pretty much the exact opposite of that. It actually seems like such a hard thing to do, I'm not a designer, obviously, but how do you get a champion to only go bot and not go mid without attaching some weird kind of, duo
XP
requirement onto them, right? Like Kallista's W or Lucian's passive type stuff. Because it's weird. It's weird to think, does every bot laner have to have one of those? At that point, like, they kind of get not normal.
Something they relied on in the past was making the AD carries more reliant on gold and not benefit from levels as much. But then they made that kind of like contrary change where they were also like, oh, well, we feel like AD carry players always complain about not having enough agency themselves and being too reliant. And so then they were trying to not make them as reliant on other people, and they're kind of like pulled in both directions. I think it's just different members of community pushing them both ways, where all the AD carry players are always like, I don't want to be so reliant on my whole team all the time and just be so squishy. And then they tried to give them like more baseline durability and stuff, but then that just makes them better at solo laning.
It seems like such a tough thing. At one point, I'm wondering, like, what if they just giga buff all the mages or something in Assassins? Because I would love to see more playmakers at Worlds. I want to see, Silas. I'm kind of 50-50 on Akali. She's sometimes really cool, but she also kind of lends herself to like the boring gameplay in a way. Just because, like, I think anything that's too safe is just kind of destined to, like, I don't know, not be that fun to watch. Yeah. I like the champions that are incentivized to go in. I mean, it's kind of a pipe dream, but I've always said, like, show me a boring game with Yasuo in it, right? It's like there's some champs that just cannot have boring games one way or another. And so I would like to see those champs buffed.
Yeah, it would be a lot of fun. And I mean, it is just tough because if you think these champions are interesting champions for solo queue and stuff, and you don't just want to delete them from a game, it's like, how many more nerfs can you do, right? Like Corki and Trist are basically the lowest win rate mid laners in the game now with like any play rate. Like them and Lucian, like 3, and they're all still played in pro. Lucian's like a 44% win rate. Trist is like 45. Corki's like 46 in solo queue. Like they have horrible mid lane win rates. All the AD carries have horrible mid lane win rates. If you go and you sort on mid lane by win rate, it's only AD carries at the bottom for mid lane now. It's like 10 in a row. So they're horrible in solo queue, but they're still getting played in pro, right? And it's just like they're so strong late and they're able to mitigate loss. I feel like it's weird because you would hope obviously that some of these defensive nerfs from Corki, like he got less HP, got less damage, would have put it in a situation where it's like, oh, he's getting all end. But all that's really happened in pro is that now they fight even less in the early game, and they just like, but people are so good at mitigating, any loss and just getting every single minion and scaling up, and it makes it really, really difficult. Obviously, LPL is still on 14-15. I believe. I'm almost 100% sure. But like Corki has a 77% win rate in LPL playoffs. It is just like every time it gets locked in, it just wins. It's 17-5 in LPL playoffs. Wow. So it is like comical how badly it is dominating, and it just feels like so many games that I've been watching all the LPL playoffs. It's like as soon as Corki gets locked in, you're like, all right, well, they won. And so it's weird when you have a champion that is so bad in solo queue but so dominant in pro. It makes it really hard for designers if they just literally don't want to delete it from the game, right? Like how much worse can you make it?
Yeah, they have been peeling back some of the like durability things I was talking about, with the Doran's Blade nerf and all these little ones that have come in successive patches. So Solo queue win rates are a little bit ahead because they have the extra little bits of nerfs that have been coming in, like trickling in. But I was always look back at the Corki changes originally, and when they were saying they were going to take away the package, I actually thought that the package was what made Corki fun and cool.
Yeah.
Like those are the exciting moments that you're talking about when you actually choose your moment to dive in. Some of them are like, oh man, it's just kind of OP when it just goes so long and you're unstoppable and you can, just like cut off an entire area. But a lot of the Corki package plays were really fun where they actually have to put themselves at risk and dive in with it. But I was like, okay, well, if they're taking away that, what are they also going to like add or change about the ultimate to make sure that the boring parts of him don't stay? And it's like, well, we took away the package, but then he still is definitely a poke champ, still has big range and still scales really well. So I feel like it actually even made Corki less exciting.
It is tough because I get removing the package because even though it was a big moment, it kind of was also his only moment. And if you're only doing something once every 5 minutes, that's kind of by nature boring. Mm-hmm. I guess relative to never doing anything, it's better. But I don't think that's the bar we should be going for, right? It's kind of similar with Azir and his turret in a way, too, where, you have these big cooldowns that are so impactful, but then, how does a champion exist to a point where, they're strong without this thing, but they also have this really strong thing?
Yeah.
It's tough.
Maybe you have to like
power budget for sure.
You have to like change the ultimate some way so that it's like you become the missile and then you have to control the missiles or something like that. I don't know.
It's like a Sion ult, you're just the missile.
You have to, and then like I don't know, something happens to the main body of
Kobe's cooking.
Or like I mean, you always wanted more like micro and stuff in champions, so like maybe like it splits into like
missiles are the pets.
It splits into a cluster bomb and then you have all the different
you
little
drive them
clusters. I don't know, something like that, but it just seems like the core part that makes him so, I guess, boring, maybe it's not even the right word, is the super long range with the ultimate allowing you to poke and then also having a dash. If you have mobility and you have safety of a dash and you have super long range and then you have all these scaling outs.
All three of his abilities are also AoE, so heavy wave clear, which is always a huge thing in pro.
Exactly. Like it's that is the recipe for pro and for this type of gameplay.
Long range, safety, and wave clear. That's like when you get those three things together in pro, I feel like you have a champion that just doesn't go away.
Yeah, I mean, totally true. Another thing that gets brought up in the conversation is like the AP jungle thing because we've seen AD mids get nerfed a lot, and it kind of brings up the question, were AD mids just so far ahead of everything else that even with tons of nerfs, they're still the best? Or is it the fact that, because AP junglers are so strong, you really want an AD mid? Because people are even playing Smolder mid now, which when Smolder came out, he was kind of like, it was hard to make him work bottom lane where he's much safer and has much less of a early game demand, and now people are playing him mid and somehow like solo killing people level 1. I don't really know what's going on there.
Somehow. I think that might be a little bit Jensen's fault for getting solo killed.
I feel like I've seen it happen in other places too, not even just that one, but just the fact that every AD mid under the sun is coming out. There's like some people are playing Sivir mid and whatnot. And so at some point, is it like, are there good enough AD jungler options, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, League's such a complicated game. There are so many systems working together at the same time that it's not always clear what the driving force is behind any given game state.
One thing I will say, at least, is that even though I think partially this narrative is driven because it's doing so well in LPL, it's still getting picked obviously a lot of 14-16 regions, but its win rate is way worse. So maybe it's not
yeah, like I said,
be cope. Maybe it's not actually that good because it is losing a lot.
Yeah, they have been making changes to almost all of these things that we're mentioning. AP junglers, they decided to go the champion-specific route, which I just wish they did a little, actually looked at the Faded Ashes and Landrews, which they actually did look at and then pulled the changes. But regardless, they have it on their radar to do something about that angle, as well as the, marksman taking a look at the runes, as well as like Doran's blade, and they're trying to find ways to make kind of, it seems like smaller incremental changes, because a lot of the changes aren't super big and sweeping. So that's probably why we're seeing this like delayed effect where, especially with some regions being on later patches, then it's a very slow change. But then the community sentiment is just like, this is what we're watching, all the time.
And for like the whole year we've been watching, it feels like.
So we'll see, because they have done other ones like the Vi buff as well. Like Vi is going to be all over the place. It was already all over the place for LPL and stuff too, I feel like. And then like we finally did see some Skarner popping up as well. And so there are definitely some other options. They actually buffed Kindred.
Nobody's playing Skarner, dude.
Huh?
Nobody's gonna play Skarner.
Skarner was so good though, was it not?
Yeah, he was smurfing. You gotta admit.
When?
I'm a Skarner hater too.
The energy
dig.
They played it. He played it 2 games. I mean, they.
Oh, dude, I actually missed that series. I was there. I was at Riot for that one.
He actually was hard smurfing.
Oh, they actually played it. Okay.
Yeah, he played it jungle. I was in your camp. Absolutely, I was completely doubting, but he was actually turbo smurfing.
He was turbo smurfing.
It was really good Skarner jungle games.
Yeah.
And the other got eliminated.
Yeah.
So good.
Well, we will jump into those a little bit later. Yeah. But also, I did want to mention the Graves and Kindred buffs. So, to your point for AD junglers, they are, because it's always been like, oh, there's kind of AD. The
only way to get the ADCs out of mid lane is to buff the ADCs so much in jungle that they have to jungle.
Genius.
It's smart.
Dark times, dude. Dark times. As a jungler, anytime I see Graves buffs, especially in Kindred as well.
Yeah. Oh, you don't have fun when you do one
I just
and then your whole jungle's
Kindred.
gone?
I almost never play against Kindred because she's just my go-to ban. If I don't know what to ban, I just play Kindred.
It's like my most played champion ever. I love Kindred.
Not against me, it won't be.
Fair. There's also, speaking more about Worlds, an interview just came out in this. It was from G2. Was this Cap specific interview?
It was a Cap.
That's what I thought. And
quote,
and the quote is, NA hasn't played the strongest version of LEC teams. LEC is stronger. I kind of like, regardless of what I think about this, I kind of like that it feels like the EU-NA rivalry seems to have been reignited, and NA is doing a lot better in it, so it feels like it is more of a battle, right? Because for a while there, I gotta admit, it was getting a little bit sad where it felt like EU just like clearly was better, and G2 was doing so well, and you didn't have really that much that you could say. You didn't really have a lot of ammo. It's like, I remember we even talked about this where we had the EU-NA rap battle a long time ago that Flowers did, and people always would be like, Flowers, do another one. And he's like, I'm not doing another one until some NA teams give me some ammo, because he's like, I have nothing to say. And now we're kind of beating him.
Now we have a lot to say.
And Core was like kind of clowning on Fnatic in the pros episode. It was really funny. If you haven't seen it, Bwipo, it's a good episode. Bwipo was kind of having an emotional moment, talking about how important it was. They, Hillsong to him and how they had this trust together, and now he's gone, and so returning to the LE stage without him is going to be this big moment for him. And Emily's like, oh, is there anyone you're really looking forward to playing against? And he's like, well, Fnatic. I gotta play Fnatic because it's like this grudge match. It's my former team. And then it's like, Core, what about you? Is there anyone you'd like to play? And he's like, well, I want to win, so I also want to play Fnatic. I'm just like, damn, Core.
I mean, they absolutely smashed him multiple times.
Back to back.
This year, so it definitely is fun, because I agree, in the sense that previous Caps would never have to say this quote,
Yeah.
It was just kind of like, he wouldn't feel a need to say it, but he does because of the results this year, and because of Team Liquid, but also it started with energy. So I feel like this whole wave of NA positive, gameplay basically that we're on got started by energy beating G2 at Worlds, and then Team Liquid took over. They handed off the torch. Mm-hmm. It's kind of sad that the energy torch is extinguished now, but they handed it off to TL before they.
A spark is all it takes.
Yeah, they were going
under the water.
They were the spark. They were like, here you go, and then TL took over and started smashing Fnatic a bunch, and then it's really has like brought a lot of like pride back to NA League of Legends. And for me, since the very beginning, we have always trash talked back and forth with Europe since before we even had competitive leagues. When League of Legends first came out and we were even still in beta, the original was Hotshot versus Wicked. Wicked was this top laner that eventually actually even joined CLG EU, but like we always had streamers talking trash against each other. Even when we didn't have opportunities to play against each other, we would always be talking trash, and so it reminds me of some of the good times where we were super competitive.
I'd also say, it's like I do think, Energy lit that torch and TL is carrying it, but I also think partly a lot of the talk is just because of how weak LEC has been looking this year. There's been a lot of, and G2 in particular, G2 has always been just like they run that league, and you never really think, like they could actually lose. It's always like, they're going to drop a game here, they're going to drop a series there, but they're just messing around. They're going to win in the end, right?
And messing around a lot.
And but yeah, exactly. The losses are stacking up. And, in their summer finals, they obviously lost to Fnatic. But then they came back and they swept them, but it was like, all the early games were really bad for them, but like, Fnatic was throwing really hard, and then they lost to MDK. They almost got swept by BDS. Then they were able to reverse sweep that. But it's like they're having more and more of these series that are stacking up where it's like, like G2 is actually looking beatable. They're showing a lot of weaknesses. Yike is playing a lot worse. Their bot lane's playing a lot worse. Caps, I think, is still playing really, really well. And Broken Blade, especially during the regular season and pre-playoffs and stuff, I think was really strong. But they don't look as dominant as they have. So I think, that's part of what is making NA fans think, hey, like even G2 is now approachable. Because it used to be like, we'll pick off the weak ones. We'll beat Mad. We'll beat the teams that we can take out. We'll beat Fnatic, whatever. But now people like, I'm hearing a lot of NA fans saying, yeah, I want TL to get to play G2, see how that goes, right? See if they can take him down. So it'll be interesting, right? Because I think LEC is more up in the air now. There's not that one team that looks as dominant, at least right now.
Yeah, it does feel like opposite trajectories because Team Liquid is for sure like on the climb, and I guess to Caps' point, NA hasn't played like the strongest version of LEC teams. We would have to go to a different timeline to play.
We'd have to go back to 2018.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny because I think Caps' interview came out as a response to APA's interview from a week or so before, where APA was just saying like, yeah, like Europe kind of sucks. And it is weird because G2 has kind of felt like the rest of Europe is kind of like their baggage, right? It's like they're like, we don't associate with the rest of them, but I guess we're technically Europe. So to them, it probably feels weird when people, flame all of Europe because they're like, well, don't like bring us into this.
Yeah.
But it was that energy loss that makes them actually targetable.
Down in the mud with the rest of us.
Yeah, like that actually pulled them down off their high horse because before that, you couldn't really say anything about it, but now we got them. We got a whole year of flaming them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will be cool though to see Liquid against G2 because Liquid pretty much like they have beat up Fnatic and whatnot, but
and everyone's beat up Mad.
Everybody beats up Mad. Yeah, so I'm down for more bragging rights. It's so fun.
Even EU beats up Mad, and Mad is still going to Worlds. I keep seeing, I think Dom maybe was the first one to post it, but Mad is qualified on like a 32% win rate.
What?
To Worlds.
What is their format?
That is
because they have the 3 split format, so they like were able to get into the season finals off of an earlier split win, and then they did, to be fair to them, they had to beat G2, so they won that best of, and then that put them far enough along that they were guaranteed to qualify.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
but it is, I mean, it's either way. Don't hate on MDK for qualifying. You can hate on the format, but it's like I always think it's dumb when people are flaming the team. It's like they didn't choose the format. All they did was play and try to win, and they beat G2. So at the end of the day, that's your format. They deserve to go. Mad, I always feel like gets unfair hate and people like, Matt isn't part of EU and blah, blah, blah. It's like, you got to face facts. This is one of your best teams, whether you like it or not. They keep going every single friggin' time to international. So they're clearly one of your best teams. Yeah. And, that's just the way it is.
I did want to say one more thing on the EU versus NA rivalry, specifically with the G2 versus Team Liquid version, because it really, in more ways than one, it does remind me of the old days where, like I was saying, like we would play versus CLG EU or like Xpeke and stuff. We would always trash talk each other, but we always had a lot of respect for each other also. Like Xpeke was one of my good friends and like traveling and stuff together and like going and visiting them was always so fun. It's like those rivals that then you go see, and when you see them in person at the tournaments, then you're like going out and partying at night and trash talking each other like in person. It was very respectful. The G2 versus TL one is extremely respectful to the point that at MSI, the players and Spawn as the coach gave interviews and they're like, we look up to G2 so much. Like, we want to be the NA version of G2. Mm-hmm. So while they're like, yeah, Europe sucks, we're going to trash them, they also were inspired a lot by, I probably like a lot of other people, the previous successes of G2, but I know also in scrims, like G2 taught them a lot.
That Worlds was nasty last year.
G2 taught them a lot, so in multiple instances. So like I know that they, have a lot of respect for them as much as it is so fun to trash talk your rivals.
And I also know that like while I'd be excited to see a G2 TL, even if G2 goes as like the third seed or whatever they qualify as, like even if they lose to MGK in lower bracket and they go as third seed, they're always one good boot camp away from being a really scary team. So you definitely can't underestimate them. I mean, Caps alone has just pulled off so much magic over the years, and there's so much experience on that roster. So they're definitely going to be scary, but it is going to be exciting to see how LEC finishes and if G2 can like go into Worlds looking like they're in good form, or if for what feels like in forever, someone else will win. I mean, Fnatic hasn't won since Caps left Fnatic. Right? Like that's crazy. And they're in the season final, or well, not season finals. I guess it's the
God,
it is the season finals. There's summer finals.
Dude,
was the last one.
I can't follow LEC format. I'm sorry. Like this is they're always in some kind of finals. Every time I look, they're in some kind of elimination match.
It's Turbo Troll because not only do they have a bunch of actual finals that are like a match that's the finals, but then they called like their whole playoffs season finals.
Yeah, so they have it goes winter, spring, summer, then season finals.
So they have four. They have a finals.
There's got to be a better name.
They have finals of season finals.
Yeah, they have the grand finals of season finals. So Fnatic is in the finals of this finals.
I think that one needs to go
crazy finals inflation.
There's there's got to be better.
The trophy inflation is actually crazy though too, because it makes it hard to talk about where you're like, someone could have like a good year and have more trophies than like Soaz or something. You know what I mean? Like it just gets, I don't actually know how many trophies he has, but it just gets weird, right? Someone who has had so much history, because you can win four LEC titles in a year, which is just strange. I think historically it starts to kind of erode some of the records and everything. And then you have the board and the downsides is when you have too many times the team is meeting the same thing. This happened when I used to cast StarCraft all the time, is there would be teams would be participating in like 10 team leagues, and you'd be like, oh, it's like EG versus Liquid. This is like so high back in the day. And then they've played like 18 times in a row across like different team leagues and MLG and at this and that, and then it stops feeling as exciting, right? So I think that's part of what I think LEC is dealing with a little bit. But World's going to be really hype, and hopefully we get a lot of NAEU matches. There was also a Carzzy interview with he went on the podcast with I Will Dominate and was talking about like old stories and stuff and various things about players not practicing as hard or partying or this or that. And people seem to be pretty mad about it. I just read reactions to it. I haven't actually seen the full interview, but I thought it was kind of interesting because there's always these stories, floating around. The one that was crazy to me that I read was that I think it was at 2021 Worlds. It said by the time they lost 3-0 to Damwon, they hadn't scrimmed in 3 weeks. after they got blown out by Cloud9 in scrims, they just stopped scrimming for 3 weeks. That one to me was actually crazy. And then it was so funny. There was a Reddit thread about it. And you have like something like that that's like, whoa, you should have been practicing harder. And it was grouped in with an Armut. And players were doing anything they wanted. On a playoff match night, he ate a burger and a pizza, and it's just
My God.
it's just like, my God.
Now we see why he went to NA.
Yeah, like, but so I some of it is obviously just like funny and harmless, and others like I can see why people get mad about it or whatever. Like, these guys aren't working hard enough.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times the most frequent one is like players playing other games, and that stuff happens. The most surprising thing to me about all of these stories was that they were from more recent times. Because to me, when I think about it, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember the crazy old days. Like when we first started, it was before there was as much money in, and like the sponsors were very different. When we first started, stuff was very crazy, and it was like, team parties like every weekend and stuff, and it would go very crazy. But I'm like, that's all in the past.
But were they before or after the games?
Both.
Okay.
I mean, we had times where we went out at Worlds. And there were players at the club getting drunk, and and it was like they weren't playing the next day, but they had scrims and stuff coming up, and then they were playing, and so it was before and
mostly
after.
Like at MLGs and all that, people would get absolutely wasted, like all the old events and everything, IEMs, MLGs, and all the old esports circuits. But usually, for the most part, at least the serious teams, it was once they got knocked out or whatever, they'd go, like go party it up and stuff. And mostly they were pretty good about it. I did have one tournament where a teammate got so drunk before a match, like I was a good boy. I went to bed early. I was trying to win. I was like not trying to mess around with those tournaments. My teammate got so drunk, they were so hungover that when we were playing in the event the next day, he didn't want to have a headset on, and so we couldn't talk to him because he had such a bad headache.
Okay,
and he literally
crazy.
fell asleep under the table, like
during a match.
No,
Or
in between games, and we had to wake him up.
Dude,
we didn't do too well, and he was off the team after that.
That's actually
it was cooked.
Really unhinged behavior. Yeah, I mean, I definitely heard a lot of crazy stories from the earlier days. Like I started in 2013.
Were you a good boy?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, like I think everyone had a little bit of crazy stuff they did in the beginning, but no, I didn't have anything that was kind of on that level of. I don't think I ever did anything that actively sandbagged my team.
Yeah,
kind of deal. Yeah, I don't know. It does feel like 2021 is pretty recent.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, okay.
Because I remember there was that one story from Crumbs that he dropped like way after the fact. Because, so what was funny was in 2013, it was 2013 spring, like the very first LCS split. I was a sub for Complexity at the time. And I remember getting asked by Dignitas saying, can you sub for us? Like, Crumbs has a family emergency and they need like a 1 week sub for LCS. And I was actually going to do it, but my team was playing in an amateur event the same weekend and I wasn't allowed to play in both for some reason. So they got DJ Lambo instead. But that was that event where way after the fact, he's like, oh yeah, my family emergency was like, I had to go, hang out with a girl. And it's just like, dude, what? Like that is so crazy. Oh man, good stuff. Not really, but yeah.
Yeah.
Good stories. Good stories.
It is funny. Like some of the stuff I think people have like unrealistic expectations about like, oh, you're never going to play another video game. You're never going to like watch a show or do something other than this. Like people do need some mental reset, right? You need to be able to have some hobbies or whatever. Obviously, sometimes it gets out of control. And like I usually play WoW at the start of every expansion, right? I know you play WoW, a lot of WoW these days too. And I will say, sometimes over the years, you would see some people playing too much WoW when they should be, when they're on a team, when they're practicing for something. I'm like, bro, you were playing 5 times as much as me, and you were a pro in a different game. So there's definitely, like, that stuff does happen. For the most part, though, especially in the last, 5 years or more, I can say for LCS, people are like cracking the whip. It's, pretty nose to the grindstone for almost all players. So it is not surprising to hear some of these kind of stories about, I got blackout drunk, or, like you're saying Humanoid wanted to like end scrims early because he had a WoW raid to get to and stuff. It's more surprising to hear that in the modern era, I guess. And so maybe that's what's getting people frustrated. Especially, I can understand it if you're a hardcore LEC fan. And you're like, we were so good in 2018, 2019. Like, we want that back. We want that era. And then, you're frustrated with some of these players. You're frustrated with some of these teams. Why can't they do it? And then you hear a story like this, and you're like, of course, this is why,
Armut ate a pizza and a burger?
That one's crazy.
Why?
That one's crazy. What a job stealer. Pizza and a burger.
Actually insane.
Yeah.
That is so good to lump that in with everything.
Yeah, exactly. This guy killed 3 people, and this guy ate the last helping of burgers or whatever.
How big was
he
the pizza,
double
though?
dipped.
Like, that's tough to do, bro. Even eating like a full pizza on your own.
What if it's, I guess it depends on the size.
It could, if it's a small pizza.
Sometimes there's like those really thin crust ones, or like,
Turns
you
out,
can knock that out.
Turns out it was one of those child pizzas and a slider. It was the burger.
Yeah, I mean, dude, that would be understandable.
You know what? Maybe he was just really hungry. Go crazy. Treat yourself.
Oh,
That one doesn't seem too bad.
Our playoffs were also pretty exciting, and to my eye, it didn't look like anyone was drunk.
No. Maybe on some place.
Yeah, maybe on some
Just a couple plays.
Maybe a couple plays. It certainly was a fun weekend, though. Of course, I guess to start it out, we were, or at least I was, really trying to hype up 100 Thieves versus Team Liquid. After their, victory over Dignitas, I was like, man, this is hopefully like they can actually, really make it exciting. Like TL is so good, but with the resurgence for 100 Thieves, there'll be a game in there, right, where Sniper pops off and they start to get a big top lead, or they use some really interesting draft and they're gonna get a game, somewhere in this series. But TL, they basically put their foot down and they.
I was feeling good about my 3-0 prediction.
They denied any possibility of that.
It was the most 3-0. It was definitely very, very one-sided. I mean, TL obviously are just kind of on a completely different level. This series, I think, reaffirmed that there is, at least from the teams that are outside the top 3, there's absolutely no touching TL, it feels like. And Impact was just absolutely insane, I felt like, in this series. He was really, really good. Core was everywhere. was amazing. I mean, I was actually really surprised that APA won Player of the Series. I'm not gonna lie.
I voted for
Yeah, I was between and Impact, because Impact also had like absolute giga top lane gap every single game, and had so many good plays. I thought between them and Core, I thought those were the 3. So I was like, APA won Player of the Series. That was really surprising to me, but it's not a knock on him, but it just was surprising. But TL was so good in that series, and I mean, I think you could just really see the difference in level.
Yeah, to me it was between Core JJ's swaps. Like, he was the one to hit that hook to get their kill bottom, and then he immediately used his timer to go top and gank top side, and then they like swapped, and he got another play up there. But I felt like started so many plays
from Fog too, so they were like unreactable. He was like always coming over a wall or something.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, APA's Taliyah was actually insane.
It was nasty.
It was so good. I mean, in the first 2 games, he was hitting so many just like W's without setup, which that's not an easy ability to land, but the really good Taliyahs make it look like an easy one. So I was really impressed by him. Also, his CS numbers were like,
insane.
They were not real CS numbers. He was it was like 200 CS at 16 minutes or something. Just like, I don't even know where he's just like creating minions to farm. He was really going absolutely insane. So I kind of got it. I think the whole team played really well, but yeah, I mean, APA definitely had a 6 series.
There was the one Taliyah game where he had gone top for a fight and then ulted bot for a dive. Like, he had like roamed a fair bit. Like, he had gone to both lanes. Also had like a fight around grubs or whatever, and it was like, say, I don't know, 12 minutes, or I think it was 14 minutes. And at 14 minutes, he still had 160 CS while moving across the map multiple times for fights. So
yeah, I think he had like 2
really
deaths
impressive.
at that point as well. So I don't know. When I saw that, I'm just like, dude, what is he doing? Like, is the scoreboard right? It just felt like too much farm. I don't know.
Yeah, and I know there were some people that were like, "Oh man, this is also like a different look for this summer for TL."
Yeah.
But for me, in MSI was still so heavy in my mind, and Talia was those like pick ban first pick MSI, and he was monstering on it. I was like, this is why even if you don't play a champ, like this split or something, he was insane on it, and they were first picking it then and using that combination so effectively. I was like, wow, they still have a lot of they haven't lost things that they were good at before, which is always something I value so highly.
Yeah.
Is not forgetting lessons or not, losing peak performances basically with strategies or champs or combos or anything on previous ones. And that was also one when people always mentioned him as coming up. They were like, well, yeah, even during the Ziggs one trick time, it was like, well, he's also an Azael one trick. And then he also he played a bunch of Cassiopeia when he was rising solo queue and Talia. And those are like two of the ones. And so he does have like a pretty long history with it.
He used to play so much Kled mid too.
Yeah.
Which
And
I was always like, are we ever going to get the Doom V, Kled mid style?
Yeah.
I hope not.
I love Kled mid.
Dude, that champion is so bad.
But we always
so
complain about
bad.
mid diversity, and then we're like, I hope we don't see Kled.
I mean,
You'd rather watch another Corki game?
No, it would be interesting to
sick.
see, but for their sake, I hope they don't play Clem. That champion is so bad. Like, oh my god, he's mind-blowingly bad.
That's funny. But we got Impact GP, we got the Ornn coming back. Not that the Ornn's a big shift, but it was just nice seeing some of these different picks. We had the Vi coming through. We had like a Kai, like their first pick, first game was this full dive comp with Vi, Talia, Kaisa, Nautilus, Ornn, like everything flying in the back line. They can do different styles. Then their last game was like the GP Ziggs Ezreal, which was like more range and control. And so it's not like, oh wow, I didn't know they could play these champs, but it was still nice to see it so seamlessly picked up from when they had last played it, because it had been like a full split of like ADC mid, we're playing this sort of style, and I thought it was a really, really impressive series, even though it was against an opponent you expected them to beat. It was the way in which they dominated was pretty crazy to see. I mean, they won the first game in 27 minutes. They had a 17,000 gold lead. Like, that's actually insane.
Yeah, I wasn't even that in love with TL's drafts when I was watching. I thought some of their drafts actually looked kind of low damage to me, especially game 2. I think that was the...
that was double tank top, Talia, Zeri, and Rel.
Yeah, it was basically triple tank with 2 threats, one being a Zeri. And I think, honestly, I don't think that's that great of a draft, but I think TL's just so good. They make anything work. And obviously, they played the draft well. They played to their outs, and... they won pretty seamlessly, but it doesn't feel like they're winning because they have draft advantages. Just watching them play almost every single game, it just does not look like it's close at all for the opponents. Even when things go wrong for them, they're not playing perfectly, but they bounce back so quickly. They just punish you in ways that other teams wouldn't. I remember one play that I really liked, which was I think it was game 2 where 100 Thieves kind of like won a fight topside, and then Quid walked up to hit the turret for plates because APA was like 30% HP. Most people would base at this point. Quid had flash, he had Merc Shreds. He's, by most accounts going to be safe there, and then somehow he just got killed. Like, Liquid just recognized, hey, this guy can't be doing this. In situations where, like, I think literally no other LCS team finds that play, just because it doesn't look that like free, but obviously it was, and they executed on it really well. So just that was one example out of a lot that we saw from them where it was just like they seem to know their limits way better than everyone else.
Yeah, I know the exact one you're talking about. In that game, there were so many opportunities where it just reaffirmed in my mind that Impact, Umpty, and Core JJ are all just S+ tier engage players. They saw so many angles and saw so many like ways to get into Fog of War or ways to engage on enemy carries that it felt like they should definitely draft 3 tanks. Like they should always have 3 engage tanks, because it was like, oh, Umpty ganks mid, then they give them like an emote, after someone ganks mid and like you avoid the gank, or like they get your flash or something, and then you usually emote and you're like, get the hell out of my lane, and then it's like 2 seconds later, CoreJJ then ganks, and the guy who just emoted, like the mid laner who just emoted, is like, oh my god, they're sending more. And it just felt like every minute or something, there was just going to be another engage from either Umpty or Core or Impact. And it was, I just felt like the pace was nonstop. I just loved the pace that TL set when they do have like heavy tank compositions, because they're like, tanks don't scale super well for the late game generally. If you want to go super late, you generally you want a little bit more damage, like you're talking about, but they were able to just use the extra engage to keep the pace really, really fast and snowball and force their wins, and made it exciting for a 3-0 to watch in my eyes. Because if there's a 3-0 that's slow and everybody's just scaling, and then all games are going to like these late team fights and Dragon Souls and Elders and stuff like that, then it gets exciting later. But you have to keep getting through this like 20 minutes of like farming and stuff. But TL, they did not have to put us through that much farming.
Yeah. The big surprise of the weekend for me was how the Fly C9 series looked, though. That one did have really slow early games, and their lane swaps were definitely not super active. It felt like every game was just like, okay, scale. Okay, big team fight. But it was interesting because it felt very much the inverse of when they met in the regular season, where FlyQuest was able to get some early leads, but C9 just like out team fought them anyway, and were able to win those. And I saw team fighting as one of C9's big strengths, right? Is that they're a team that is able to create these big early leads, and then like JoJo or Berserker are going to like have a big moment in a team fight and take over the game for you. And that's kind of like how I saw this team. Blabber obviously a really, really good team fighter as well. And it just did not happen, and it felt like what they were doing wasn't working, and they just kind of got, I don't know if it was just that they were too set on what their prep was or what was happening, but they just never deviated from the initial plan. And
Corki, Lilia, Prio.
Four games of Corki in a row, 4 games of Cassante in a row, 3 out of 4 were Lilia.
Yeah.
And then some ADCs and supports slotted in. But it's like, that was clearly their plan. It's not like they made no adjustments. They changed their bans. So their read obviously was, okay, our champs are the problem. It's their champs that are the problem. But like, when things are clearly not working in a series, I was so surprised to see that they didn't deviate from that at all, especially for Thanatos, who I don't even see as a good tank player. Like, I see him as like a really lane dominant player. That's his big strength. I was shocked that he didn't get to play a single game of Renekton, and that they're not allowing to put him like on the more dominant side of this, like Renekton Cassante. See if he can get a big lead against Boppo in lane. See if you can get JoJo on something that can maybe make some bigger plays or something. I don't know. I just was really shocked that they didn't mix anything up at all.
Yeah, I pretty much I echo that sentiment as well, because obviously I was rooting for C9. And these games were really, really slow. It wasn't really what I expected at all from C9, because if you think about the team on paper, we talk a lot about what are their strengths and whatnot, and this team having potentially the highest cap out of any team because they have such strong individual players. And granted, as disclaimer, obviously I have no connection with the LCS team outside of like doing podcasts with them. I'm not a coach, nothing. Like, I have no say on how they play and whatnot. Just gotta be sure we're clear there.
Meteos actually drafts for Cloud9 from his co-stream.
Yeah, I do.
Little known fact.
No, but I mean, it did seem weird when you have players such as Thanatos and Berserker, who are potentially the strongest laning players in their role, being put on champs that I feel like you would pick these champs if you have a weaker player and you're trying to cover up their weakness. Blind picking Cassante. That's something that, Cassante is a skill expressive champion. I'll stand by that till the day I die. People love like talking about how OP he is, but it's not easy to execute on that champ, honestly. Like, there's a lot of skill expression there. But that said, it's not really a counter pick type champion, and I feel like having Thanatos counter Bwipo, who's picking a safe champ, might be better. And then also with Berserker, they were picking 3 out of 4 games. They had him on MF or Ziggs, which to me, those are not really big carry type champs. Those are weak side champs. If you don't feel confident in your AD carry's ability, you're like, hey, dude, pick these champs and just like ult a wave when it starts looking rough, and we're gonna play the other side of the map. So it felt like C9 was kind of drafting for almost like this double weak side style play, because I think MF's actually not a carry in the sense that if you give her all your team's gold, I don't think she's going to be able to pop off and carry the game like some other champs can, because, the more of a threat she is, like, gold-wise and whatnot, the more people are just going to think about her ult and not give you that big ult. And so I don't know. I just feel like there's better options for the team.
Yeah, my read on it was that, and again, I don't have to give this disclaimer, but I also don't coach Cloud9. I have no time.
I do coach Cloud9.
My read on it was that they were so mind gamed almost by lane swaps, and that lane swaps exist, that they were then drafting for safer lane swappable, versatile lanes. Whereas their biggest strengths to me, like you're saying, Cloud9 is a team that's all brawn, all mechanics. They're like, hey, stand and fight me fairly, 2-on-2 in my lane, or 1-on-1 for Thanatos. Where if you're looking at it on paper coming into this series and you were able to guarantee that it was going to be 1v1 Thanatos versus Whippo, I guarantee you they would have slammed some way better picks for Thanatos where he could, try and demolish Whippo, right? And try and get individual advantages. But I feel like a lot of the success that we saw over this split for Cloud9, with their early game being the very best in the whole league, was tied to standard lanes. And so it felt to me like, with everybody looking up to Team Liquid and FlyQuest also using lane swaps a lot, and it felt like that is in everybody's minds and has really shifted how they go about drafting and setting up for these games. And I think that has been to the detriment of Cloud9. But I did really like the interview at the beginning that we just kept referencing, because JoJo and Inspired were both of the opinion that if the game was slow and methodical, that their respective teams would have the advantage. Inspired was like, oh yeah, we will. And then JoJo said, nah. For sure, if it's controlled, then we are going to have the advantage. But, clearly it was to the benefit of FlyQuest. I would also throw out there, though, that there were specific individual throws from Cloud9 multiple times where it came just after they had done something good. They had just won in one of the games the big fight around Dragon, and then Vulcan walked really deep into the jungle and chased Alistar with his Leona ult and stuff, and then threw, and that led to a Baron. That was a single play that was like a 6,000 gold swing, because they got Baron right after all those kills and stuff too. And that had just been a Cloud9, big win in a team fight where we were hyping up Vulcan himself for, stunning them on the MF ult and, keeping them in place and stuff. And then right after that, the next game, we had Cloud9 win a big team fight mid, and they went to Baron with no smite. And then the Baron got stolen with Blabber not having smite, and then they also got all chased down and for kills.
That was actually so hard to watch.
And so in my mind, yes,
that was tough.
Looking back in hindsight, we're like, okay, there's a lot of things that Cloud9 didn't play correctly or didn't draft correctly, but also I can pinpoint 2 really big throws in 2 of the games where they had just done something really good. And if those things had been, taken care of or cleaned up or something, I feel like it would be a bit different of a discussion. I feel like right now it is so negative on the side of everyone looking at Cloud9 because of that. But I feel like a couple small branches in the timeline, and it wouldn't be so negative. I still think FlyQuest. I still think FlyQuest really deserve their praise, though, because being able to come back from the deficits, and then also when they were the ones with the big lead, to be able to slam them was very impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest things, just to touch on what you were talking about earlier, with Thanatos being such a good laner, what really surprised me was that a lot of times the Renekton was picked first, and then they just picked Asante as the answer. It wasn't even like, oh, we need you to blind pick a tank this game. It just felt like they really got caught up on some things. Like, they seemed super worried about ever giving Lilia over to Inspired. So they're like, we have to get Lilia. It's kind of maybe that was like the cornerstone of like we need Lilia, so therefore we need an AD mid laner, so therefore we need Corki. Like we cannot let him have this. So they're denying him Lilia every game, but oh crap, he's on Ivern, and Ivern's working pretty well. Okay, we gotta ban Ivern now. Like oh crap, now they're playing J4 Orianna, and it was like it felt like it was more about maybe you're talking about the lane swaps, you're talking about like these types of things, and when I'm talking about like Lilia, it's like you're trying to stop FlyQuest from doing what they're good at instead of just doing what you are good at.
Yeah. I think that point you made about Inspired's picks was really big too, because I feel like Ivern is one of those champions that if you're going to play a slow game, I would not want to be playing against Ivern in those slow games, because it was game 1 or 2 where Inspired got a really early redemption, and it was just like every single play that happened, he was just playing like a Karthus jungle. He was just redemptioning the play.
Yep.
It was so crazy. And so this champion's just very hard to outplay in those kind of games. I think that if you're going to play against Ivern, you want to pick something really aggressive, maybe a Nidalee or something, and just have crazy pushing lanes and actually deny him from farming. Because one thing that, if you play Ivern, you realize is omega cringe is that if you're getting invaded, you can't actually farm. You can't start channeling your thing on the camp if you're getting attacked. So if there's a Nidalee who just kind of like takes red and then walks in your jungle and disrupts your first clear, you can have a really, really rough game. So I think if you want to play against Ivern, taking a route like that would probably be best. And C9 is one of the teams that could pull that off, I think.
Yeah.
But they were opting to go for these slower style games into Ivern, which I feel like was just kind of counteracting a lot of the potential fights they could have gotten, because like this champion is just so annoying, his bushes and everything. So I feel like if they took away the Ivern earlier, or maybe banned it, like not necessarily take it for themselves, it could have gone better.
Yeah.
That being said, though, like Cloud9 did actually control the early game objectives really, really well. In almost all the games, they were getting like 6 scrubs and like setting up for either getting a soul or being on soul point super, super early. Mm-hmm. So like C9 did play the early game well in that regard. It's just kind of like, I guess Fly had the better scaling comp.
And they were out team fighting them, I think.
Yeah, they were out team fighting with Ivern. And it was interesting to see that, when you banned Ivern, it put Inspired on Jarvan, which I thought was super cool to see, because this is something that to me seemed possible. He seemed like a pickable champion for a while. And so they played the Jarvan Ori combo, which when I was thinking of Dignitas, this was something that came to mind. It's like, if you have a really good Orianna player and a jungler who's like good at ganking, then like just play this. Because I know from experience, laners hate playing against Jarvan. Like carries who are on a mobile champs like get actually traumatized walking up to mid lane when they don't see Jarvan, and even like level 2 ganks and whatnot. Like this champion is just like the nightmare for laners. So I like that Jarvan's rearing his head up a little bit. I think that's a cool pick, and obviously it worked really well for them.
Yeah, I also just loved the first 6, I think, almost even 7 minutes of the Jarvan game from Inspired, because to me, he played it almost perfectly. Out of the lane swap, doing a very efficient clear both times because there were no other options to go for. And then on his reset for his third full clear, comes down for the lane gank. Very efficient gank onto bottom, still goes back up. So his farm was still really high on Jarvan, but then he specifically for bottom lane put that Jarvan pressure, and they got multiple summoner spells off bottom lane, and then they dove bottom lane. They kept pushing Berserker off. They kept getting kills down there. And I felt that game so quickly snowballed out of control in the favor of FlyQuest. While Inspired has had so many titles, everyone has had a lot of respect for him as a jungle, but it's like the CEO full clear, and then everyone's like, ah ha ha, he never does anything. He's always just farming for next game and all that stuff. And then he plays like Ivern, who is pretty low CS, is not a farming jungler, is very supportive, playing for your lanes. And then he plays Jarvan, but not only does he still keep up very efficient pathing in CS, but he also puts on, pressure on bottom lane specifically, which is like the one you can really play off of. So I just thought it was very impressive to see that in this series.
Totally. And I think FlyQuest also, we talked obviously a lot about it from the C9 side because people, I think, were surprised on how the series looked and, surprised. Most people were predicting C9, even I heard from a lot of players that FlyQuest had been doing really, really bad in scrims and more than normal. People were favoring Cloud9 heavily. A few people I talked to were like, it's an easy 3-0 for Cloud9 and this kind of stuff. But obviously that Cloud9 didn't show up. FlyQuest really did show up and played really, really well. And I think FlyQuest also deserves credit for being able to just find easy slot ins. Every time Cloud9 banned something, it just didn't feel like it mattered at all. You know what I mean? It was okay, now Ivern's a problem, so we're gonna but Ivern's not actually the problem. It's Smolder. We're gonna ban Smolder, but then they pull in the Azir combo with that, and then they just always had something else to slot in. I think for whatever Cloud9 tried to attack, and I felt like they played the map really well. Quad was always getting so much gold in the side lane, and it really reminded me of how TL plays with APA sometimes, where in these slow games it always feels like TL is getting an edge because APA is in the side lane killing your towers while the other team is forced to group. And I think FlyQuest really enabled Quad very, very well to do that. Something that I was really interested in when we were talking in our story meeting, I was trying to pull up some stats for jungle proximity and whatnot. So in the LCS, there was a lot of people were kind of joking about, CEO full clear. So when we looked at Inspired's jungle stats, he was 9th out of 8 junglers because there was a sub with mid jungle proximity. In this series, he was by far highest out of anyone in playoffs. It was he just played for mid, and it really, really worked well. And I think Quad played incredible with all the gold that he was given and with the leads that he was given. Really found himself in good situations and was able to do a ton with it. Masio, I felt was playing more of a supportive role in most of the games in this one because he's a lot of Ash duty and this kind of stuff. I think he played a Jhin game too, if I'm recalling correctly. But I just thought FlyQuest really leveled up in their team fighting. Their drafts all really made sense. They played the map really well. It was Cloud9 was taking all these objectives early, but it just didn't feel like it mattered because they were always getting to the point that they needed to get to win that big fight and always kind of able to execute on that. So it started to make me, really excited for a potential matchup against TL because I really want to see, can someone really push TL in a best of 5, right? Because TL has obviously looked so good, and FlyQuest I felt really was able to step up and look great in this series. Should we talk about the lower bracket match?
Yeah, I mean,
this was a rough.
Like I mentioned earlier, I wasn't actually able to catch that one yet, so I still need to catch up. But I'd like to hear about it from you guys.
Well, they played Skarner, and it was great for contracts, but the series, oh man, the series was so rough. Honestly, for both teams.
That's what I heard.
Where do we start?
I heard it wasn't very good.
We kind of talk about the elephant in the room. I feel like it's tough because Energy had such an incredible end to last year, and there was so much hype, so much excitement around this team, and it was they finally did it. These players who've been working for so many years and have been undervalued and overlooked, they made it work, and now they're good, and now they're going to be great, and they win summer, and they beat G2, and then they come back, and they just couldn't make it work this year. And, some of their best players really had off years, and Palafox, it was so sad because he had such a down split and really such a down year that was very, very disappointing. And then we came into this series, and even in a loss in game 1, he looked really good. And then game 2, I think as well, also looked really good. I think it was even game 3, he also looked good, or was that the Azir one where he first threw? But there was 2 moments especially, but he just had some of the worst throws I have ever seen in competitive play. It was crazy, and it feels so bad to end your year on that moment after a good start to this series where it felt oh, he's actually fixed it. He had this tweet where he's I feel like I'm battling against my own mental, and if I can fix that, I really feel like we can come back and we could still win the title and stuff. And then the early games come out, and I'm damn, he actually did it. He's playing well. Let's go, Palafox. Okay. And then he has this Azir moment where I don't know if you've seen a clip of it, Meteos, or not, but they're in a pretty good spot, and they're around mid lane, and he just slides forward, and I think he E'd by accident or something, or maybe thought his soldier was the other way, and he slides in, he's on top of Sven, so he could maybe kind of bail it out by just ulting Sven in or trying to make some sort of a play, but I think he just has a crazy panic moment, so he E's in, realizes, oh shit, then he flashes out, and then he ults nothing and just dies. And then Dignitas were getting pounded in this game, and then Dignitas is like, okay, let's go to Baron. And, I think someone else maybe tried to bail him out of that situation. They died too, but whatever. They go to Baron and Contracts and I think FBI were kind of able to hold the line. And Contracts had like a really good ult on Skarner where he double ulted like 2 people and they pulled it back and they killed him. And it's like, okay, thank God. They like bailed him out. They like don't lose the series off of this because that would have been a series ender. And then get in the next game and he's playing Corki and they like gank from mid like 1,000 times and get him in a really good spot. And he there's this one play where FBI is playing Jhin, I think, in that game and has no flash and he gets caught mid, but it's like not a big deal. It's just like, oh, it's just one death and they committed some stuff for him. And then Palfox is playing Corki and he just Valkyries into the middle of 4 people and just like Valkyries in, and then of course they all like instantly flash on him and ult him and they just use all their stuff, right? And he has his flash up and he just dies. And then they go to Baron and they get Baron and they lose the game, they lose the series and stuff. And it was just like, these 2 moments were so heartbreaking. There was another one as well, which I don't think was as crazy, but it was kind of like a series ender where Doka was playing Kennen and Huhi was playing a really good Bard game. Huhi and Contracts I thought smurfed this whole series, by the way. And Huhi hit a Bard ult on the back line and 2 members. And Doka was going in on the Kennen and I think he just didn't realize the Bard ult was going or like hadn't hit. So he flashed ults on Kennen, but they're Bard ulted. And so like it was like a same-ish time, but the Bard ult had clearly landed first. So it's like he maybe it's adrenaline or maybe just I don't know what happened. But anyway, so Kennen ults on top, they lose that fight, and that's the end of the whole series. So like but there was like these big moments where it was just like the wheels fell off. And it was just kind of really sad, I felt like, because you see Contracts on stage and he's crying and he give a really good loser side interview, but like all the players are devastated and there's this feeling that it's like for sure Energy is not running back the same roster next year. There's no way, right? And we know the LCS is changing and there's 2 different teams coming in. So it's like this is the end of at least that iteration of Energy, and it just I think was like a really sad way for it to happen.
Yeah, and honestly, it was sad for both sides because Energy had been getting these leads also and then throwing. So Dignitas, when it's a super long 5-game series and they feel like they just kind of barely squeaked by getting basically thrown to, they were also, not happy with how the series went or how they played. Those are by far the 2 most difficult interviews I've ever done. And it was like, yeah, it felt so rough, even for the winning side interview, for Sven even, because afterwards, well, when Dig got up, they had the same things in their minds playing this series, like he's talking about for Energy, where it's like everybody knows, there are changes coming to the league next year, and unsure of what the future is going to look like for any of them. And so you could really see it when this series ended on that side too. And it was like, Sven was very honest and open in his interview also. He was like, we need Jesus, and he thought that they coming into this had actually had good practice this week. And they were actually feeling, more confident for one of the few times where they had been getting beaten a lot of practice this whole split. And so like they kind of did feel like, they had to like fight through the mud, to be able to get this one. And so they're very much, looking at this week of scrims and practice and stuff to, hopefully find something new and better to be able to continue on through the gauntlet, because it was very much like a kind of squeak by in this series. And so, man, yeah, that was definitely a hard one to do.
I feel like, yeah, it was. I mean, it's the kind of elephant in the room. I think for a lot of players is like, oh, is this the end of my career? Right? Like when you're not performing as well as expected, and when you're on a roster that had that expectations of like, oh, you could maybe go to Worlds, or you're gonna win, or you're gonna do whatever, and you don't live up to that, and especially when you're ending on a really bad note, and some players are gonna lose their spots because new players are gonna be coming in with new teams and so on. That is really stressful, and I think especially for players who have had a lot of success, it's really hard to like come to terms with that, of your perception of how good you are versus like what the results are. If it's not lining up, it feels terrible, right? It feels really terrible. So, I mean, I think it's definitely a tough series through that lens. I will say for Dig, I thought the two kind of like shining lights that made this series a win for them were Sven and Licorice to me. Sven I thought was really kind of like pretty solid and consistent. Licorice I thought was really good and was absolutely gapping Dokla in every single game. The only game where he wasn't, massively behind from the 1v1 Dokla was, I think it was the Kennen game where they just like chain gank Licorice over and over and over. I might be misremembering the game because they're all kind of starting to blur together, but I think it was that Kennen game. But overall, he was just getting like these monster leads. There was one game where they were up 10K and Licorice had over 5,000 of it in the 1v1. Like on Cassante. He had another game on Cassante where he's up another like 3,000 and something gold. Like I thought he was such a hero for this team. And it was cool because I wasn't expecting that, honestly, because I didn't think we had seen Licorice at that level that I was expecting from him, this split, right? It's like when he's on Golden Guardians, best top player in the league. And then he came back and it was like kind of, middle of the pack. So it was cool to see him step up and really have some of those hero moments because I thought he was saving them.
And it is also worth mentioning that Dignitas got some pretty big leads out of lane swaps in 2 of the games.
Mm-hmm.
So like exacerbated that issue.
Yeah.
And Licorice would have like a 2-level lead over Dokla pretty early on into the game. And so they definitely did get some benefits out of lane swaps as well. At least especially early on in the series.
Yeah, especially early.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, I thought Spica and Jensen, Jensen was pretty rough. Spica was gapped by contracts in every single game, I thought, pretty hard. And Isles also, I think, got gapped by Hugi every single game pretty hard. So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, they won, but like you said, they weren't happy about how it looked at all. So it's tough, and they kind of have to go back to the drawing board because, again, they're in that situation where it's do or die.
Yeah. So, I mean, he did say that they had good practice last week. So for their sake, hopefully they have, another good week and come in with some good improvements.
Yeah, it's cool to hear Licorice did well because I don't know if you guys saw the Impact interview where he did an interview where Impact rarely ever fires shots, but he actually like directly called Licorice washed up, which I was pretty taken back by. I was like, wow. What did Licorice do to this guy?
APA effect.
No, but it wasn't even like in a malicious way. He was just talking about I think the question was something about like, how have you managed to like stay so good for so long? And he talks about he's just always improving. And he says that, you're only washed when you stop improving. And he specifically used Licorice as an example for that. So
that almost hurts more.
Yeah, that's like completely, because it's
it was
about him. It's like,
it was like really cold-blooded, for sure. But I mean, I don't think they were saying like ill will behind it. It was just like,
that makes it worse.
That's why it hurts more.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not like this guy doesn't like you. No, he actually just thinks you're bad.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really interesting interview. And yeah, he fired one right at Licorice for sure.
I will say, despite there was kind of like this gloominess hanging over this series a little bit, it was an exciting series to watch. And regardless of, for Energy it's over, but for Dignitas they're still in playoffs. And the reality is, you're only 2 series away from Worlds, right? So it's like there still is that possibility. Of course, it is like a very unlikely. I think no one is going to bet on, regardless of Dignitas or 100 Thieves, whoever wins, no one's going to bet on them against Cloud9, or at least they wouldn't do that today. But I think it would get pretty interesting because it's like whoever wins between Dignitas and 100 Thieves, you're a top 4 team. And if Dignitas wins that, I feel like top 4 is basically where most people had them. You know what I mean? So it's like, as weird as it is, it's like, yeah, they didn't look very good for most of the year. But if you finish 4th, isn't that kind of where everyone expected them to be anyway?
And you're also only as good as your last series, and people only remember really your last most recent performance. So even if you've had a rough split or like depressive,
end on a bang.
Even if it doesn't have to be the final end, if you have a long stretch of poor performances, you can have a really good game, and people will be like, oh my God, they're back. This person's back, or that person's back. And it can slingshot you forward. It's the same as people like really overreacting to like one bad game or something. The same thing can happen the opposite direction.
One really good game and they forget all the bad.
Well, yeah. I mean, especially to a degree, if you have a long history, like a lot of these players, of success, people want to feel like you're back. That's an exciting storyline. People want to jump on that. So if given the opportunity, I feel like people would jump on that. And it doesn't have to be so gloomy. If you can all of a sudden find some success and you can have that spark.
Absolutely. Well, we're gonna take a quick break, but we'll be right back.
Hello?
Bro, what are you parking?
Seriously? What is that?
Remote smart parking assist. You could have parked anywhere.
They could have parked there. They could have parked there. They could have parked there.
Welcome back to The Dive, driven by Kia. Before we start previewing the playoff matchups for this coming week, we have to talk about the Kia Rookie of the Year. We have the results. They're going to be out by the time this episode goes out. The winner was Masu, which was not a surprise to me. Congratulations to Masu, but it was first place was Masu, then Sniper, then Thanatos. But what was really crazy is that Masu, he only received first place votes, not a single second or third place vote, and he was an absolute landslide. 90 first place votes for Masu. Second place was Sniper, who got 6 first place votes.
I don't know if I'm surprised though.
Really, that one-sided?
Well,
Wait, does that mean the people who put Sniper first didn't have? Wait, does that mean they're people from FlyQuest?
Maybe.
That must be right, because like,
what is there 6? Because 6 people voted Sniper first.
yeah, but that
And so those 6 people, like you're saying, they didn't have Masu second or third.
true.
That means they were either from FlyQuest or they were hard capping, because not putting Masu anywhere in your top 3 is like
that is
crime.
true. I'm not sure because I just have the results in front of me.
I mean, I see
I
it
don't
too.
have the full ballot, so I don't actually know.
Just reading a spreadsheet here.
The full ballots do get released though, so we can do some investigative journalism. We can get on the case.
I think either way, though, super impressive. Masu had such a great year. He was someone that I didn't really know much about coming into this year, honestly. Like, I think he played in Academy last year.
Yeah, he was in Fly A or whatever for a little bit, I think.
And I remember hearing a little bit of buzz about him, but definitely a phenomenal first year for him. So, well-deserved.
So just doing some quick math here, there are 96 first place votes. There are only 64 second place votes. So a bunch of people just didn't put second places. I didn't even know you could do that on the survey.
I thought you couldn't because I tried to not vote for Coach of the Split.
And
and got told I had to fill it out or my votes didn't.
Well, also I couldn't click forward because I tried to do that on some and leave it blank, and I tried to click forward and the survey wouldn't go forward. But the third place votes, there's even less.
I'm willing to blame Mark for this.
Our spreadsheet could be wrong, is what I'm taking away from this. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm just doing some basic math here, and it's not adding up, fellas.
Yeah, it's not adding up. I agree, but we'll hope that he is in fact Rookie of the Year. I mean, it would be insane if he's not. I for sure thought he was gonna win. I thought maybe the voting would be like a little bit closer because Sniper did have a really good spring, but Masu also had a good spring and had an amazing summer, whereas Sniper definitely couldn't reach the spring highs.
I think I know what it is. This must be points, not number of votes. Because if you get a first place vote, I think it's like 3 points or more points.
Okay.
You get more because they have a total at the end, so it must be like.
Oh
well, yeah, I think it's points. It must be points and not actual number of votes.
Because look, snipers add up to 61, and it just says 61.
Yeah, that's points. Total points.
You think so? Okay,
I think so.
Okay,
that's because there's the other explanations are way weirder than that.
Yeah, that could make sense.
Because he got 54 points for his second place votes, so then it adds up to 61.
All right. Well, either
I'm
way,
gonna go with that.
Masu wins by a landslide.
Congratulations, Masu, you killed it. It's definitely been exciting to see how he has developed and how good he has been looking for FlyQuest. It's really cool. The team has kind of transitioned, I think, to being more about like Masu and quad than it was just like topside only in spring, right? And they have really been looking really, really strong. So congrats. That is pretty sick. The first matchup we're going to talk about, because this is the Friday one that's coming up, is Dignitas 100 Thieves. This is a rematch. 100 Thieves did 3-0 them last time. Then I guess the question is, like, did Dignitas learn enough to try to change something from this? I know we were talking a lot about, like maybe Dignitas would have a big advantage in lane swaps. And it was interesting because the same thing was then again echoed. CoreJJ, I think, was talking about this. It was CoreJJ and Masu and Bwipo that were on the episode. I'm pretty sure it was Core that said this, but I can't actually 100% remember. But saying, like Dignitas could have the advantage in lane swaps because Licorice got these big edges, or maybe it was Bwipo was saying this, but anyway, against when they played against NRG. But like it didn't work for them last time. So, maybe 100 Thieves their confidence is more shaken because they got blasted by TL, but I feel like that shouldn't really bother you and you just swept this team. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, when we saw the Liquid series, Sniper had a really rough time against Impact, especially dealing with those lane swaps. It was like every single game he was just incredibly behind. And that was another thing that Impact mentioned on the interview I was talking about earlier, where he said that with top laners, when they get behind, he said sometimes it's the team's fault, but it's almost always the top laner's fault when you get that behind. So, it seems like Sniper is still figuring it out. It's not easy. I don't know how many people on 100 Thieves roster like have played, in the lane swap era, because I think having that previous experience helps a bit. Obviously, the game's changed a ton, but it's not an enviable position to be a top laner in lane swap League of Legends.
When did lane swaps first start happening? When was like the actual initial era? I'm trying to even remember. What year it was.
2013. I think like my first LCS game I lane swapped.
Oh really? Okay, so like way back in the day. When was it did it get really popular again though? We had like a while where like every game was lane swap and everyone was doing like Lulu's area. Was it the Ardent Sensor meta? Was it that year?
I don't think it was Ardent Sensor.
No, it was like random games with Scion were like the only time you'd really see it. I never felt like it was a full-on meta though when that was the thing.
They had to. It became a really big problem. I forget which year it was. I don't think it really matters what year it was, but it did for a stretch become a really big problem, and that's when they started making these changes, like the bulwark change and stuff.
That was 2016 is when they got rid of lane swap for the first time.
Yeah,
that's why the reason I asked the year was because I was trying to think, was River playing at that time? And River started playing in 2018 pro. So yeah, probably literally no one on their team played in back then.
Yeah.
Or
honestly, the lane swaps are very different from that time now as well anyway. Yeah. And I feel like you have to relearn so many things because minion waves actually operate differently now.
Yeah.
As well as far as pushing. So I do think it is something where, of course, you've got a bunch of young rookie players regardless, and you have to teach them so much that it just like doubles your curriculum basically.
Yeah.
If you're going to like pro school, there's already so much they have to adapt to coming from tier 2 that now you just added on a whole bunch of extra work and extra options. And again, I always want to see Sniper in 1v1s, and so much of why he has found success has been in traditional top laner roles. And so, especially in that case, it's a big thing. But as you said, it didn't matter at all in the first matchup that they played in. And I think the only, there's not a lot of analysis you can do to say it's going to be so different this time, because we didn't see much to that effect in the Dig Energy series, except maybe you could say those couple games where they got Licorice way ahead. Yeah. Maybe they could do that versus Sniper. I think that would still have been the goal, though, in the first time that they matched up. It's just that maybe you would have to cite stuff that we haven't seen on stage, as like what Sven was talking about, their practice that week, which was the week when he was referencing it was the week after they played 100 Thieves, leading up to their series versus Energy. specifically said that week was good. And so we could cite that week being good. And then if this week is also good, then that would be my reasoning for, changing prediction to the side of Dig. But I don't think that reasoning is strong enough for me to change my prediction. So am still going to be on the side of 100 Thieves.
Yeah. I'm still on the 100 Thieves side as well. I mean, it feels like you need to attack them in the lane swap, though. I mean, it's like, even when you look at Champion Pool, Sniper just doesn't play tanks. Like, he's Renekton and Jax. Like, those are the ones he wants to play, right? Both of those champions aren't that good in lane swaps. Like, Licorice is Mr. Tank, basically, these days. So put him on a tank, try to lane swap, try to create a big advantage, a clear avenue of attack. I also just think, please, God, just no more 80 carries for Jensen. Like, he did not look good on them in this series either. They've tried a number of different ones. I just think at this point, who cares if you're getting like the one trick accusations or whatever? It's like, you need to win. Like, this is the end of the year. This is to stay alive. This is to try to go to Worlds. You need to get on a mage. You need to be playing, whatever you're most comfortable with. I would rather see them play like J4 Ori and stuff like that. Like, take a page out of FlyQuest book. Like, play these kind of comps, because I think that can really suit their play style. And just have Sven on a standard carry and look to like 5v5. Hopefully you get advantages from lane swaps. You can put Sniper behind. If you can put Sniper behind out of lane swaps and just like draft a strong 5v5 team fight comp, I think Dignitas are in with a chance for sure. But I want to see them actually make some adjustments and not just, attack them the same way they did. Because clearly last time 100 Thieves blew them out of the water. So I feel like you have to be favoring 100 Thieves, especially when Quid, I think, has looked way better than Jensen. Like, way better. That we haven't really seen a secondary carry really step up and like dominate for Dignitas or anything like that, right? Like, Sven, I think, has been solid, but he hasn't been taking over games by any means. Licorice was definitely the big hero in this last series, but yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to not go into this favoring 100 Thieves based on how the last series went and based on kind of what we saw from them.
Yeah, I think you pretty much covered everything that I was going to say as well. I think lane swaps, obviously, just the biggest thing to talk about, I feel like, with a lot of these teams is just because it's kind of a binary pass-fail in a way. If you know how to do it or if you don't, it's just so pivotal to your game. So you can actually just lose the entire game off of a failed lane swap because you're just so behind. And then when you just will never have pressure on one side of the map, you can't contest objectives, you're going to have someone that's just struggling to be useful at all the entire game. And being threatened to be solo killed and whatnot, it's just so unplayable. So definitely something 100 Thieves probably going to look to avoid. I also wonder, though, with the Jensen playing mage issue, is what is Spica going to play? Because he did play some non-AP junglers against Energy, it looks like. He played Xin Zhao in 2 Vi games. So that's good. You kind of don't want to play like Lilia with Orianna or something. That would just be Merc Tread value city. So yeah, I mean, I would like to see them play that kind of stuff. I think those champions are playable right now. Xin Zhao, Jarvan. I even feel like Rek'Sai wouldn't be that bad in the current meta. I feel like you could pull it off. Maybe not against Lilia, but if your opponent's blind picking like Sejuani or Maokai or something, I think Rek'Sai's pretty strong as well.
Yeah, this is an aside, but just because I know you love Rek'Sai and have for a super long time, have you tried? Because I saw this little interaction in solo queue and then they immediately nerfed it. But the Spear of Sojin was amping item damage and actives. And I noticed this because I saw Rek'Sai had such a crazy win rate with going Stridebreaker into Sojin. And so I played it a few games, and it was crazy the amount of damage. I feel like I didn't even like drop off. I usually feel like I'm, not scaling well, but like the damage was crazy because you would be able to proc it so quickly. You would burrow Q someone before you go in, and then go in and you'd get a knock up Stridebreaker and auto attack, and you would just be smashing with full stack Sojins. And with the AoE knockups before, I was like, oh, I do less damage now, but like, I like that I have my knockup back, even though we lost the slow. But now I was like, wow, the damage is also there. And I don't know if you got to try that before they nerfed the item interaction.
No, I'm more of a Titanic fan.
Yeah.
Like, Stride's not bad, but I feel like Titanic gives you like way more carry potential.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it would have amped that as well. So would have been there. But Spirit Surgeon's still pretty strong on her because the ability haste is pretty sick. Anyways, yeah, I definitely agree. It's a fun champ. I always think like, wow, that's going to be fun if it's in pro because I feel like it will make the pro team also just go for more ganks, like especially in side lanes where you can burrow over the thick walls and stuff. So I'm always open to that possibility.
And we kind of saw from when Contracts was playing Skarner, it was like I was really doubting it, but he had so many good angles. Like if you really can find those angles where people aren't prepared for you, it can be pretty powerful.
Yeah, I mean, ganks is just with the geography changes this year in the game. Ganks have been way less prevalent, which in a way makes it so if you play one of those champs who has the unique routes, people probably won't be as ready for it. Skarner coming through walls. Rek'Sai can also come through walls. The tunnel's got a really long range. So, I'm definitely biased. I really like the champion, but I don't know. I can see someone playing it. I know Speaker really likes Rek'Sai, so maybe he'll whip it out.
Yeah. I have a feeling this series is going to be like absolute banger. I think it's actually going to be a really fun series.
Yeah, I mean, it's lower bracket. If it's not, I mean, they're just gone, right? So it's back up against the wall for both these teams, and we'll see what they can cook.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited. I don't think that the Dingshas guys are going to just like go out on a 3-0 and that's it. Like I feel like we're going to be in for an absolute bloodbath. I think it's going to be a really fun series. I'm actually ridiculously excited for this series.
If you still want to abuse the Sojin thing, they actually missed one item. They missed one. I don't know if like
you better get it in fast. Kobe's about to get a nerf.
Dude,
I don't know if I'm gonna get like banned or something. Is this bug abuse? But they did miss interaction on one item, which is Dead Man's Plate. When you auto attack stuff, it stacks Sojin procs, no matter how many stacks of Dead Man. So because it adds that little proc of damage, it's something with it. It must be something with how it's coded
as a spell
onto your auto attack or whatever, but it still counts as a spell. And so something in the spaghetti, Sojin still amps and
dude, if you're building Dead Man Shojin Rek'Sai, you're not winning.
I'm not saying specifically for Rek'Sai. I'm just saying that this is the one
who builds Dead Man Shojins. Who can you build this on?
So I was thinking, and I got this.
What champion is this?
I got this from X Petu. He is the like Shen challenger.
Shen yeah,
he plays like Shen mid and stuff, and he always loves Dead Man's because Shen has good base attack speed and not other or attack damage, excuse me, and not other great scalings. And so he actually does that exact item combination on Shen. And so I was trying
Titanic, or he does it later in the game.
Well, he went for an early Tiamat for the wave clear, and then upgraded the Tiamat afterwards. After then getting his Dead Man's and Shojin for the wave clear. So just sat on like the baby Tiamat, but I was really like, it's not a lot of champs that can use.
Yeah, I was like, you're cooking, but like, who's gonna eat? Like who can actually use this?
I don't know. Like 99% of my Rek'Sai games is like Titanic into Sterix. Yeah. Like maybe a cleaver from.
So the reason I was cooking on it is like those are pretty good for Volibear. So Volibear is actually my proposition because
it's your one true love.
You can rush the Sojin because you need ability haste. So rushing Dead Man's is total int. But you could go Shojin into Dead Man's for Volibear, and
do you think it's better than like the Flicker Blade stuff?
So to me, I'm super on. I don't like the Flicker Blade at all because it leaves me like squishy. Okay. But I am on the Cosmic Drive rush.
Okay, cool. I know that the win rate on Cosmic Drive is crazy on launch.
I love those buffs. Anyways, though,
let's talk about next series. Then obviously, I do think this is going to be a really fun one in the lower bracket, but also the game that everyone's going to be looking forward to is on Saturday. Team Liquid Fly. They're both already going to Worlds. Now they're trying to get into the grand finals to be one step closer to winning that championship. And it is going to be, I think, really, really exciting. There was a quote from Whippo on Pros that I really liked. I was listening to it this morning, and he was saying he was calling certain teams sandbag teams, where basically the idea is you hit them and they just like, oh, they just take it. They don't hit you back. And he was saying Team Liquid, he thinks is the only team in the league right now besides them that isn't a sandbag team. So he's like, oh, if you hit Team Liquid, they're gonna hit you hard. Or if you make a mistake, you're gonna feel it because Team Liquid's gonna really punish you. And when they go for their big play, it hurts because like you're gonna make it happen. And so I thought that was fun. And their series, especially their first series in spring, was an absolute banger in the playoffs. That was actually the last time Team Liquid lost a series because they were undefeated in the regular season for this. They won the rest of the series in playoffs. They lost that 3-2 absolute bloodbath series against FlyQuest in spring, and that was really, really fun. So I'm hoping we're going to get like an absolute action-packed one, a repeat of that.
Can I just say that's a weird like retake of the phrase sandbagging? Because sandbagging is so widespread as a good team that is playing bad.
I'm just saying what Bubba said.
Yeah, I feel like that is like almost universal. Sandbagging, you're sandbagging, right?
Yeah.
I feel like punching bag would probably fit better.
Yeah.
Because like do you hit sandbags? Like sandbags just weigh things down.
You will hurt yourself if you hit a sandbag. By the way,
Yeah,
like,
those things are heavy.
Have you ever even
All
like
right, it was
kicking
terrible.
them?
It was a terrible thing. I shouldn't have brought it up. We'll get Bubba on here next week so you can tell him about it. You can flame him.
Need to educate him on sandbags. Like if you punch a sandbag, you're gonna hurt.
You know
your
what you should
fans.
do? You should bring a sandbag to the LCS.
Yeah, have him punch it.
Be like, punch it. See how it feels. It doesn't need to hit you back because your wrist can be broken.
You just hit yourself.
Yeah.
But I am also like I'm super amped for this series. You talking about quotes like Core JJ was also talking about it. He's also much nicer. He was like, yeah, FlyQuest are improving, but we're also improving. So everyone's going to be improving, and it's going to be a great time, and we're going to show good games, and it's going to be a great League of Legends.
That's too polite.
Yeah, I embellished a little on the quote, but the core of it is that all of the matches between our S tier of our top three, I'm always incredibly looking forward to, just because I do feel, even with small changes from week to week in practice, either of them could come out on top. Now, I have had that hope multiple times for like upsets, and I just keep getting proved.
You've been burned before.
I've been proven that Team Liquid have my full, they've got my full confidence now.
They're a good team.
There's a couple times where I'm like, oh, okay, Cloud9's going to, do some, or like, oh, okay, now Energies or 100 Thieves is going to take a game. And I just keep getting my confidence in TL reaffirmed and reestablished. And so I think right now it's at an all-time high. I'm also one that I'm always looking to okay, what's the angle to upset the general opinion, and topple whoever's on top. It's too comfortable. Everybody thinks this team is the best team.
Too easy.
But now I'm like, it's too comfortable. I also think they're the best team. Type of thing. So
These pillows are pretty nice. Maybe I'm going to stay here.
they actually are the best.
Yeah, I actually I don't know. I'm pretty confident in Team Liquid as well here. I'm trying to debate if it's going to be a 3-0. Part of me kind of feels like it's going to be a 3-0 just because
Team Liquid looks so good.
They do look good. We talk about top 3, but TL really just seems like they're
top 1.
Yeah, by themselves in top 1 right now. And I guess we haven't seen them against. When was the last time they played Fly?
It was first game of the entire split, so it's been forever.
That is one thing that makes it hard to judge is, if you're not actually seeing these teams against each other, it's a little different. But at least looking at their last series and just the way they play and what they're going for, FlyQuest did beat C9 in a fairly convincing fashion score-wise. But when you look at the games, it didn't feel like Fly was playing the same way Liquid was, right? In Liquid's games, they just have so much pressure all the time, and they're constantly looking to punish you for things that don't even feel like you're going to be punished for. Whereas Fly was really just kind of hey, we're going to concede every objective and just outscale you with Ivern type stuff. So, obviously they'll probably play differently against Liquid because of the type of team they are, but I don't know. I think it's pretty likely Liquid just sweeps them.
And earlier, those Cloud9 pinpointed kind of big throw moments I was talking about, I have 100% confidence that TL do not do those. So if FlyQuest do a similar plan like they did versus Cloud9, and TL is the one with those early advantages of all the dragons in this big gold lead. I don't think TL is going to have a massive throw and give you the Baron, and then, now you get to do your outscaling and team fighting type of game plan. I feel like that's definitely one of the big differences. And the FlyQuest members have all been super complimentary, and they're like, yeah, that this series is going to be a lot harder, even in their post-game interviews.
Yep. And on pros, they were talking like clearly just Masu and Bobo said, just point blank period. Team Liquid's the best team in the league right now. And I do think, to your point, it's like, I think FlyQuest needs to play differently. I think that they looked really good against C9 overall, but I don't think you can play a slow game like that where you just seed everything early and still win against TL, because I think they will get so much more. They are so good, and one of the things that really always impresses me about them is as soon as they have any sort of small advantage, you can never enter your jungle again, it feels like, against Team Liquid. Like, and Core are just posted up in your jungle. They're farming all your camps. All the vision is denied. You walk in, you're getting engaged on, you're getting picked. Like, they will fight you for it nonstop. And that is something that I think TL does way better than any other team in the league. They play the map really, really well. And as soon as they have an edge, they now control 3/4 of the map. And then it's like, well, now you can't play slow anymore, because if you don't retake, part of your jungle, you just lose the game because you have access to less minions. You're falling further and further and further behind. It just snowballs like crazy, right? So then you're forced to fight them, but then you're fighting blind into an area where you have no vision and where TL already has an advantage. So they're just so good at that type of game that I don't think FlyQuest can play in the same way. So I'm hoping that FlyQuest, comes out with a bit of a different look. I honestly, I would be surprised if TL swept them. I think FlyQuest is pretty strong and are pretty adaptable, and they're usually the kind of team that is going to like throw some different stuff at the wall if it's not working. So I would think that they are going to win a game, if not some games. But yeah, it's just at this point, it's like, you cannot, in good conscience, predict against TL until someone gives you a real reason to. Otherwise, it's all just conjecture. It's like, I think TL are going to lose because they're going to play worse than they have before. You know what I mean? Like, you have no...
Like, okay,
you have no data that has, like, there's nothing that we've seen that should make you believe that they are not the best team, right?
One thing that gives me a lot of confidence about TL is that they also aren't the team that seems to slow down when they're winning. They had their undefeated 7-0 season. Like, granted, it was really short, but but they're not doing the C9 where the more you win, the more you start going out there with your drafts. Like, they're still just playing what they think is best and trying to win every single game. So that does make it, pretty likely that they're not going to just randomly like lose the game on their own, because the only thing I could say about their drafts is sometimes it looks like they draft kind of low damage, but they haven't really been punished by it so far, and it seems like something they're totally comfortable doing. So,
do you think they could be punished by that? Like, the comp you talk about where it's 3 meatballs to Leah Zeri. If you're playing that and FlyQuest gets Ivern, like an Ivern comp, do you think that is something that could really be punishing? Where it's like, okay, now all of a sudden you're low damage, and they have this enchanter that means you have to have enough damage to like kind of punch through.
I don't know if you're punished necessarily by a pick like Ivern alone, but it would be more just like if you fall behind in the game, like you get outlaned randomly, you lose a fight, all of a sudden you just don't have enough damage to kill people. And so even if you CC chain somebody, they're just surviving it, and then like you just can't win. So I think that's the bigger risk. But if you can just, win everything early because you're just playing better, then you don't really get in that situation.
One thing I will also give a lot of credit to, I thought Bwipo did such a good job of actually shutting down JoJo in this last series. It felt like every single fight, I mean, he played Renekton in all 4 games. Every single fight, he is on top of JoJo, on the Corki, he's stunning him, he's pushing him back. And it was just one of those situations where it felt like, they had identified that JoJo was going to be the big threat on the Corki, and his whole job was just making sure that JoJo couldn't have a team fight where he's just sitting and shooting. Like, not once was he able to do that, it felt like, the entire series. So, I thought that was really impressive, and it just kind of made me think of that when you're talking about, okay, if you're a low threat comp, if you're able to shut down one of those threats, all of a sudden, you pile all on that one person, then maybe they don't have enough damage to punch through or whatever. I'm just kind of trying to think of like, okay, like if they were to win, or how could they win, or what could they, what could you really think about? But I will say Quad really performed very, very well. Masu's been performing very, very well. But it's just so hard when you look across at the counterparts to be like, yeah, he's better than that guy.
Yeah, I would also say, since just giving credit out, since we focus so much on Masu and Quad, I really think Busio has been playing well.
Yep.
And I was actually a little bit worried after some of the like MSI and coming back. Like you were saying, a lot of the high pressure situations, maybe he had been making some errors, but I feel like he has been quite good. And it does get like overshadowed when your lane partner is a rookie. He's like, newer and younger and is getting Rookie of the Year award and is rightfully so credited with being a massive carry for FlyQuest. But I do think Busio had some really good engages and is also able to play the Bard and there were some missteps on the Bard, but there are also some really good plays on the Bard. So you can kind of like, he can definitely contest for some of the picks that Core JJ really likes. I would still say by far Core JJ for sure was my first team All-Pro support, and like you said, you can't say they're better, but I do like that you can, he can contest there on draft and stuff like that with him and like look for similar plays.
I think for Busio to, fair or not, to kill any sort of choker narrative, he has to do well. He has to get to finals and do well in finals, right? Because I thought he played well in spring up to finals where he had a horrible series. And then he went to MSI and really played bad, right? So it's like, in those biggest moments, I think he really struggled. Whether that's just like a random bad day or whether it is like, oh, the bright lights got to you kind of thing. When people start thinking that, the only way you can kill it off is by being in an equally big situation and doing well, right? So fair or not, I think that's what he's going to be, dealing with is people, may label him with that until he goes to finals and has a good series or until he goes to Worlds and has a good tournament or whatever. But I agree. I think he's been having a really good year. I think he's been improving a lot. It's not like it's just Masu. All the pros that I talked to, the bot lanes in interviews, in public, private, wherever, are all saying this is just a really strong bot lane now. Like Masu and Busio are a really good laning duo. They're tough to play against, and they are a big threat. So I definitely think he deserves his credit as well. Whippo on pros also was talking about impact and was really complimentary. He was kind of like firing shots at different people and whatnot. And he was bringing up the like, is Berserker him thing again and trying to push Masu and Core to basically say like, oh, he's not him. It's kind of like what it felt like. But he was saying that like he was really excited to play against Impact because he was like, Impact is the bar. Like Impact is a great player. Like there's good players in the LCS and there's great players. And he was saying Impact is that bar for greatness. And, he's so good that basically like he was saying he really, really cares about performing internationally and performing at Worlds. And that's like what really drove him to want to come back to competitive, which I thought was pretty cool. And he was saying like his barometer for like basically can I do well internationally is can I do well against Impact? Because he sees him as, that kind of player who's like, really good even internationally. So he was giving him a lot of respect. And I thought that was pretty cool.
I mean, if you fire a shot at Impact, it's going to bounce off the wall, and it's like punching a sandbag. Okay, that is gonna hurt. Everybody will be coming for you. So yeah, better give respect to Impact. I will say also, the bar is usually the like base that you have to get over.
He's the bar for greatness.
Okay.
Not like these Whippos saying. Leave him alone. He's not here to defend himself, you bully.
I just think it is hilarious. The only thing I'm really worried about for TL actually is if they like let ego start to get into it. I don't think it is going to happen, but we had Core JJ on, the last day after they had already had their thing. And I was like, okay, no ego though. And he was like, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It was just 100 Thieves. We have no ego. They're very much still focused and they're all so, grindy in their work ethic. But have noticed Jake's got an ego now. Spawn is getting a little bit of an ego himself. He's got to get that in check. I know you listen. Calm down a little bit there, buddy, and bring home the championship.
Pipe down a little.
Bring home the championship.
Win Worlds first.
Yeah, win us the Worlds.
Then okay.
You can say whatever you want.
Whatever you want.
You know what?
Carry you around on a throne when you come into LCS.
NA winning Worlds would be so sick.
Yeah.
We need that.
We'll get one of those. What is it, like a palanquin or what do you call it? Where they carry around the royalty.
Yeah,
Spawn could have one of those.
Yeah, well, I'll carry you around on my shoulder.
We'll carry you around.
Whatever you want.
Whatever you want, bro. Until then, pipe down.
Yeah. I'll farm you Mage Blood.
But to be honest, I haven't heard him being cocky, so I'm just repeating what you're saying. He was pretty humble when I talked to him.
But I like where you're at though. You back me up.
Yeah,
anyways.
I back you up.
Pipe down.
But he did tell me they could lose to either of the top 3 teams. So he didn't seem like he was being cocky.
Yeah.
But he's being cocky. Pipe down low, bro.
Yeah,
all right, that's going to do it for this episode of The Dive. I don't think we really need to go into the theoreticals of the next series. We talked a ton about Cloud9. But it's going to be a really fun weekend of LCS. Thank you, Kia. This was The Dive, driven by Kia. Remember, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode of The Dive. You can also check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere else you listen to your podcast. Make sure to send us your questions on Twitter with the hashtag TheDiveLOL. Week 3 of playoffs starts this Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific, as Dignitas takes on 100 Thieves. Make sure to tune in. Thanks for watching. We're going to be sending our last team to Worlds and deciding who is that final team to go to the LCS Finals weekend. We'll see you then.